Let's take a look at some sample multiple choice questions for the AP European History exam. So here I have questions 7 through 9, and I start with the image. Notice they don't really give me a lot of words. It says an illustration of a square-rigged caravel. I think I remember that one. 1502, so I know this is very early. And I can tell Livro das Armadas, it's a caravel. This is in Portuguese, João Sorau or something, right? I remember that the caravel has this sort of flat back to it, which helped the Portuguese navigate, and that's it. I don't need to spend much more time here. So now I'm going to come down to question number 7. It says, which of the following best describes the main effect of 16th century advances in ship design as reflected in the caravel shown in the image? So which of the following best describes the main effect, not cause, effect, of 16th century advances in ship design? So advances in ship design, well, I kind of already said it. They helped the Portuguese sail around. So I'm going to look for answers here. A, the streamlined designs lowered the amount of specialized training required for navigators, opening up naval careers to more social classes. So more social classes could become navigators. I don't know anything about that, so I'll leave it. B, during the 16th century, ship designs favored smaller cargo holds, leading to less long-distance trade. So there was less long-distance trade in the 1500s? That doesn't make any sense at all, right? The world blew up in the 1500s with international Atlantic trade, with Vasco da Gama going around the coast of Africa. It's the opposite, so B is a pretty terrible answer choice. C says, innovations in steering and speed capacity allowed Europeans to shift from coastal navigation to oceanic exploration. Innovations in steering and speed capacity allowed Europeans to shift from coastal navigation, the coast of the Atlantic, to oceanic exploration, so across the Atlantic and into the Indian Ocean. That makes a lot of sense to me, so I'll mark that. And then D, advances in ship design led to an increase in piracy. Well, that sounds really fun, but I don't know anything about that. I don't think that's what happened, so I'm going to go with answer choice C. It's very important to be decisive here. Remember, I got 55 questions, 55 minutes. I don't have 10 minutes to think this through. I successfully eliminated B and D, which is really useful. And now I'm going to move on, right? A was just something I didn't know about. C seemed almost like common sense. I want to point out something really quickly here. How important was this image in helping me get this question right? Not at all, right? I didn't really need the picture to get this question right. You could have actually just asked me number 7 all by itself, and I would have known to get rid of B and D. So this is a good example of how the stimulus doesn't really stimulate anything. Let's take a look at question number 8. It says, the invention of the caravel towards the end of the 15th century can be considered an early example of which of the following? So the caravel, end of the 15th century, so that's the late 1400s, is an example of which of the following? A, the emergence of Venice as a major trading center along the silk and spice trade routes. Well, no, because Venice is not in Portugal, and the caravel helped in Atlantic trade. I kind of knew that as outside information, so it's not going to be A. B, that British attempts, this is about Portugal, British attempts to establish control over Atlantic, no. It's just the wrong country. They're basically asking you, hey kids, which country is this? The Livro das Armadas with a caravel. This is not Britain. It is not Venice, Italy. What about C? A rising interest in creating naval vessels that could be used to attack enemies. Let's see, naval vessels that could be used to attack enemies. Naval vessels to attack enemies. I don't see, this isn't a warship, so that's not right. And then D, Portugal's use of technology to create an empire based on naval power. Yes. D, this is all about Portugal and how the caravel helped them explore the world and become a dominant empire. Let's go to question number 9. Critics of the creation of overseas colonies during the age of exploration would have most likely agreed with which of the following statements? Oh, I hate these questions, right? Questions that are like, that's not even plain English. So let me break it down. Critics of the creation of overseas colonies during the age of exploration would have most likely agreed with which of the following statements? So if you were a critic of creating overseas colonies, what would you have complained about? And I remember Bartolomé de las Casas was one of these critics. He criticized the Spanish Empire from within for its abuses in the New World. So would a critic say that overseas colonies provided Europeans with vital access to lucrative trade goods and trade routes? Well, no, that would be an advantage of colonialism, so that doesn't make sense. Notice that that answer is pretty terrible because of common sense, that very often you're going to look at answer choices and there's not some magical strategy about why it's bad. It's that it just doesn't, how could a critic be praising the benefits of colonialism? It's just baked into the question. You might not know anything about AP European history, and you can get it right from the wording of the question itself. Pay attention to this. Then B, overseas colonies allowed Europeans to bypass Muslim control of overland trade routes into Asia and Africa. Another benefit, and it says this is critics. So why would critics be talking about the benefits? C, overseas colonies led to a reorganization of local cultures and societies under European control. So the colonies reorganized societies in the New World. Okay, maybe. Overseas colonies allowed absolute monarchs to centralize their authority and expand their territory. Oh, that also makes sense. So, but that's another benefit. So no, it doesn't make sense. The correct answer is C. Sometimes you get stuck between two choices. It's helpful to come back to the question stem. If you notice, when I was going through this question, how many times did my brain come back to the question itself, come back to this part? It was probably about 4 times. I'm testing the answer choice and interrogating it against the question. I'm taking the answer choice and saying, does it answer the question? How does it relate? So A, B, and D are sort of opposite day answers. They're answering some other question rather than the one I'm given. So this is a great example of how this particular stimulus, this picture of a caravel, has very little to do with the content of these questions. Now I'm going to take a look at another one. Here I've got questions 16 through 18 and I have maps. A lot of AP European history questions will like having 2 texts or 2 maps or images next to each other. So here I have 2 maps. This is Europe in 1914 versus Europe in 1919. Well, I know these dates. 1914 is the beginning of World War I. 1919 is the end of World War I. So at the beginning or before World War I have 3 groups. I have the Triple Entente, which is in the lightest color. So that's here with the United Kingdom, France, Italy, joined in 1915, Russia until the Russian Revolution. Okay, then I have the Central Powers, which I'll do in red. They are in that medium color. That would be Germany, Austria-Hungary, Bulgaria, and Turkey, which joined later. And then finally, I have, and I'll do this in green, the neutral countries, which are Spain and some of these other darker colored ones like Switzerland, which is always neutral, and these Scandinavian countries. That's just me talking through the different breakdown of the Triple Alliance, the Triple Entente, and the neutral powers. And then I see by Europe in 1919, I have the boundaries that I'm familiar with today. So now I'm going to look at question number 16. It says, the alliance system shown on the 1914 map of Europe was primarily the result of. So actually, I also didn't need the map here, right? Because I could have just used my background knowledge of the 1914 setup of Europe and its alliance systems to help me. There's no information in the map about what led to this. It says, A, the need to establish inter-European economic and political alliances in order to combat the effects of decolonization. I thought decolonization happened later, but so I'm just going to leave that. B, an attempt to maintain the long-term balance of power in Europe by forming collaborative and defensive relationships with other countries. So the alliance system is a result of B, a desire to make alliances. A lot of times it's really useful to take the sort of boring test words and translate them into plain English. B is saying the alliance system was set up to maintain alliances. Okay, so that sounds right. C, the unification of European countries under the single currency. That's the euro. That's not till much, much later. That's not till the last couple decades. And D, the long-term tensions between Roman Catholic and Protestant nations. That's also at a time period. So notice answer choice C is wrong by about 100 years almost. Answer choice D is wrong by about 400 years. And so because they're out of the time period, they're just terrible answers. And then decolonization comes much later. These things almost seem to be talking about the European Union. So A and C are out. B is the correct answer. Question number 17. The changes in Germany's national borders after World War I, shown in the 1919 map of Europe, were primarily motivated by. So again, it's not in the map. I can't look at this map and say, oh, the German borders here were motivated by something. There are no words in the map to tell me. I have to know that as outside knowledge. So the changes in the borders were motivated by what? A, the need to prevent future conflict by providing for a strong and stable Weimar Republic. Well, I know that in the Treaty of Versailles in 1919, the French and British did not want to make a strong German republic, so that's out. B, the desire of many of the peace negotiators in Paris to punish Germany for its role. That makes sense, okay. C, the influence of Wilsonian idealism on the peace negotiation process. So I've heard of Wilsonian idealism. I know that had its influence in making the League of Nations, but I don't know how that affects Germany's borders. And then finally, the attempt to strengthen the League of Nations through the inclusion of Germany, Poland, and Czechoslovakia. Well, Germany was not in the original League of Nations. So again, outside knowledge, not in the stimulus. The stimulus is stimulating nothing. And so now I have the changes in the national borders after World War I were motivated by, and notice Germany shrinks. That is something that is in the map. So if I can see over here, and I'll do this in, let's see, I'll pick a different color here. I'll do this in yellow. That's fun. All right, so Germany has all this territory over here that is now part of Poland. So the creation of Poland, the shrinking down of Germany, is part of this broader desire to punish Germany. And that's why B makes sense. So there I was doing a little bit with the map, but I knew what Versailles, the Treaty of Versailles in Paris was all about. It was all about punishing Germany, making them apologize for the war, making them pay reparations, and shutting down their military control. Let's take a look at question 18. It says, which of the following is an accurate statement about the European economy following World War I? So what happens to the European economy after World War I? Again, not on the map. I'm going to use my knowledge. A, that Great Britain became the world's economic superpower. As a result of significant levels of wealth and resources. I don't remember that, but I'll leave it. B, France became a leading industrial nation as a result of technologies it developed as part of the war effort. I don't really remember that one either. Sometimes the answer choices will almost intimidate you a little bit because you'll say something like, oh, I don't know, that sounds like that could be true. Do I not know something? In that case, just leave the answer choice right there. That's how you can go through these choices. C, Germany suffered hyperinflation, that definitely happened, as a result of the shortage of goods and an excess of cash in circulation. I remember this. This is the famous pictures of German people taking wheelbarrows up of German Deutschmarks to buy a loaf of bread. D, Russia attempted to rebuild its shattered infrastructure by implementing a system of laissez-faire economics. Laissez-faire economics is the opposite of the Russian Revolution, of Soviet-era communism, so that's out. It's going to be C. Germany suffered hyperinflation as a result of a shortage of goods and cash. Again, the maps meant nothing for this individual question. I'm using my knowledge of AP European history to help me perform well. Now let's take a look at a text-based stimulus. Here I have two texts. The first is from the Schleitheim Confession in 1527, and the second is from the Council of Trent. So I'm very familiar with the Council of Trent. I've read that. I've taught it to my students before. I've actually never taught or worked with the Schleitheim Confession, which is fine. Even if you've never seen the source, you don't need to have seen it to do well on this. So I'll read the Schleitheim Confession. It says, 1527, baptism shall be given to all those who have learned repentance and amendment of life, and who believe truly that their sins are taken away by Christ, and to all those who walk in the resurrection of Jesus Christ, and wish to be buried with him in death, so that they may be resurrected with him, and to all those who with this significance request it, baptism, that seems to be the theme here, baptism, and demand it for themselves. This excludes all infant baptism, there we go. This excludes all infant baptism, the highest and chief abomination of the Pope. In this, you have the foundation and testimony of the apostles. So this is clearly an Anabaptist source, right? Anabaptists practice baptism again, effectively, because they believed from the New Testament that only confessing believers could be fully baptized, fully immersed in water, not infants who don't have that choice. So they're rejecting infant baptism. What does the Council of Trent say? Well, I'm going to guess. Let's see. Yes, here we go. If anyone denies that infants newly born from their mother's wombs, even though they be sprung from baptized parents, are to be baptized, or says that they are baptized indeed for the remission of sins, but that they derive nothing of original sin from Adam, let him be anathema. That is the coolest word in the Council of Trent. Anathema means to be cursed forever. If you deny infant baptism, you are cursed by reason of this rule of faith from a tradition of the apostles, so not directly from the apostles' words in the New Testament, but a tradition of the apostles through the Pope. Even infants who could not as yet commit any sin of themselves are for this cause truly baptized for the remission of sins. So I've got a source from 1527 and a source from decades later. One of them is Anabaptist and one of them is Catholic. That's going to help me structure this. I don't want to waste too much time here. Let's get into the questions. 19. The passages are best understood in the context of which of the following? A. Theological differences between radical reformers, so Anabaptists, and Catholic counter-reformers concerning the issue of papal indulgences. Well, papal indulgences doesn't come up. Wrong answer. Theological differences between Calvinists and Catholic counter-reformers concerning the issue of free will. Not free will, not Calvinists. B is out. C. Theological differences between Lutherans and Calvinists concerning the issue of grace. Not grace, not Lutherans, not Calvinists. FYI, Lutherans and Calvinists practice infant baptism. So C is out. D. Theological differences between radical reformers, Anabaptists, and Catholic counter-reformers, Council of Trent, concerning the issue of the forgiveness of sins. So not baptism, but yes, baptism. Baptism is about the remission of sins. That's in both sources. So the correct answer is D. Question 20. Which of the following best characterizes the point of view of the Anabaptists? So they've told me that they're Anabaptists. I knew that as outside information, but there it is in the question. As shown in the excerpt from the Schleitheim Confession. A. Baptism is only valid when the believer confesses and chooses to be baptized. Maybe. B. Baptism is only valid when it is presided over by the appropriate ecclesiastical, that means church officials. That's not a topic that's discussed. Baptism is only valid when the believer has fully committed to adhering to the rules of the church hierarchy. I don't remember anything about church hierarchy, but okay. Baptism is only valid when the individual is an infant and has not yet committed sins. Wait, this is the view of the Anabaptists in this first source. Well, they're against infant baptism, so this is another one of these kind of opposite day answer choices, right? Like it's clearly the second source that it's referring to. So this is a great moment. In multiple choice tests all the time, I'll get rid of two bad answer choices and not be necessarily sure about the other two. So what I always do is I go back and reread the question. Sometimes that sorts it out. So which of the following best characterizes the point of view of the Anabaptists as shown in that first excerpt? A. That baptism is only valid when the believer confesses and chooses to be baptized, or baptism is only valid when the believer has fully committed to adhering to the rules of the hierarchy. Let me just go back up and find the answer real quick. When is baptism valid? Let's see, wish to be buried. So it's to all those who walk in this way, who wish to be buried, and they demand it for themselves. So this is about their choice. So the correct answer is A, when the believer confesses and chooses to be baptized. So notice how I sorted this out. Wasn't any outside knowledge. It was going back to the question. That didn't necessarily help me. Then I went back to the passage, and that's what helped me figure out the correct answer. Last one, number 21. Which of the following was a principal area of agreement among most Protestant reformers and most Catholics in the 16th century? So Protestants and Catholics are fighting, literally fighting with each other and killing each other in the 16th century. But where did they agree? What's an area of agreement? The weight that should be given to Scripture versus the weight that should be given to tradition. We saw this already up here. Schleitheim Confession, testimony of the apostles. Catholic Council of Trent, tradition of the apostles. So that's a point of disagreement. B, the belief that Jesus was both divine and human, which is a Christian idea, and that he lived in Palestine. Well, yeah, everyone agreed on that Jesus was a real person who was divine and human. C, the role of faith versus the role of good works in the believer's life. So the role of faith versus the role of good works, that was an area of disagreement. Remember, Martin Luther says, sola fide, only by faith. The Council of Trent says it's by faith and good works that people are saved. And then D, the belief that religious images and sculptures were useful and appropriate. And of course, religious images are hugely contested during this period. It's been a very interesting theme of the history of Christianity. So B is correct. That between Greek Orthodox and Russian Orthodox versus Catholics, there's a debate about images that splits those churches deep in the Middle Ages. And then there's a debate in the 1500s. Some Calvinists literally destroy and deface art, or literally take out buckets of white paint and whitewash the walls. You can go to churches in Switzerland today and see these whitewashed walls. Underneath them is all this medieval Catholic art. So D was a major point of debate. So as I've gone through these multiple choice questions, notice I keep using the same method. I read the passage pretty quickly. I focus my reading on the actual text of the questions. That's the most important reading I'm doing. Then I work through the answer choices. I'm not looking for the right answer and running away. I'm looking for wrong answers. I'm paying attention to things like extreme language, only, must, first, last. I'm paying attention to things that are in the wrong time period. I'm paying attention to things that are like the opposite of what the question's actually asking for. And then, if I'm down to two choices, I'm gonna double check and move on. You always want to leave an answer for each individual question, and you want to be decisive and move on quickly.